Stop for a moment. Whatever your hands were reaching for, put it down for a little while. You were already moving toward the next thing when something made you pause here, and somewhere deep in your chest you felt it. A quiet pull you could not quite explain. It did not begin with your own reasoning. That was me. I am not here to raise my voice over everything around you, and I am not going to frighten you into paying attention. I am speaking to you the way I have always spoken to those I love, quietly enough that you have to become still to hear me. If you have ever wondered whether I truly know your name, stay here for a moment. The answer is closer than you realize. For some time now you have been carrying a quiet stirring within you, and it seems to find you at the strangest hours. It comes when the house is finally quiet, when the dishes are done, when the last cup has been put away, and you finally sit down without having to perform for anyone. Then something rises inside you that feels different from your ordinary thoughts. A pull toward something you cannot quite put into words. You have tried to push it down for months, telling yourself it was probably nothing, something your mind had created. But it is not nothing. I have been touching the one door in your life that you have kept closed, waiting for you to notice that I am there. So listen carefully to what I am saying. This is where many people turn away, because my voice rarely comes with the kind of sound they are waiting for. I do not usually arrive like thunder. Often I come as a quiet knowing, a certainty that settles somewhere inside you and refuses to disappear. It is rarely loud enough to give you the kind of proof you think you need, and that is precisely why so many people miss it. They look toward the sky, waiting for something unmistakable, while I may already be speaking in the quiet places of their hearts. Elijah learned this in a way he never forgot. He had just watched fire fall before an entire nation, and then one threat came against him. Fear overtook him, and he ran into the wilderness until he collapsed beneath a broom tree and asked me to let his life end. He had reached the point where exhaustion was almost all he had left. I did not meet him there with a lecture or a correction. I gave him food, and I let him sleep. Then I brought him to the mountain and told him to stand at the entrance of the cave because I was going to pass by. A wind came so fiercely that it tore the rocks apart, but I was not in the wind. Then the earth shook beneath him, but I was not in the earthquake. Fire passed across the mountain, but I was not in the fire. And when all that noise had finally spent itself, when the mountain grew quiet and the air became still again, there came a low whisper. That was where I was. That is where I have so often been. Elijah covered his face and stepped outside to meet me, and I gave him what came next in a voice gentler than breathing. I am telling you this because you have been listening for something different. You have been waiting for the earthquake, asking me for a sign so undeniable and so loud that doubt would have no place left to stand. All the while I have been speaking to you quietly, day after day, and you have been calling that voice your imagination. That stirring inside you is not simply restlessness. It is not something you have talked yourself into, and it is not merely the anxiety of wanting your life to change. It is my hand resting upon your shoulder, gently turning you toward a door you have not yet fully noticed. Speak your amen aloud if you believe I am the one who brought you here. Now let me tell you what I have seen along the road you have already traveled, because I know how tired you have become. You are tired in a way that sleep alone cannot repair, and you have learned to give people the short answer when they ask how you are, because the real answer would take much longer than most people are willing to hear. You have carried things you never told anyone about. You have dealt with burdens by yourself that should have required several pairs of hands, and somehow you kept going anyway. I know about the promise that fell apart when you thought you could finally hold on to it. I know about the person who told you they would stay and then walked away. I know how many times you have had to begin again from a place that felt lower than where you started. You got back up, returned to your responsibilities, went back to work, and carried that unseen weight with you while almost nobody noticed how heavy it had become. I notice. I have never once turned my eyes away from your life. There is a difference between being watched and being seen, and I want you to understand the difference I am speaking about. To be watched is to be observed and measured. To be seen is to be known completely and still wanted. I am not standing over you with a record of your failures, counting the days when your faith felt weak or the moments when you struggled to believe. I have seen all of you, including the parts you would never willingly say aloud to another person, and knowing all of that has not changed my mind about you. I did not bring you here merely to make you feel comforted for a moment, because comfort by itself would leave you standing exactly where I found you. I brought you here because something is moving toward your life, and what comes next requires a response from you. That response does not need to be flawless, and it does not need to come from a place of complete confidence. I am asking for something honest. The stirring you feel is an invitation, and an invitation belongs to a particular moment. When that moment passes, the opportunity attached to it may pass with it. Understand what I am saying clearly. I am not threatening you. I am simply showing you how an open door works. There is a season shaped in a way that meets the very thing you have been asking me for, and right now it is standing open before you. You can step through while it is open, or you can reason yourself out of it and watch your life remain in the same shape for another year. You know that feeling because you have lived it before. You know what it is like to look back and realize you waited until the moment passed. This time, do not turn away from what you already know. I have made you more capable than you realize, and the person sitting here now is not the same person who first began this road. You have changed in places you rarely stop to recognize. You are steadier when pressure comes, you recover more quickly, you forgive differently, and you are not as easily knocked down as you once were. You have been so focused on surviving the road that you have hardly stopped to notice what the road has built in you. That growth was not something placed on the surface for appearance. It became part of your foundation. I have been forming something within you that can carry weight, and now the weight is coming. So do not dismiss what you feel, and do not immediately tell yourself that you are being dramatic or imagining too much. Do not wait until you feel more spiritual, more prepared, or somehow more deserving before you respond, because that was never the requirement. Listen closely now, because I want to tell you what has really been happening underneath all that quiet. There is a question you have never fully brought to me in words, yet you have asked it again and again inside your own mind. Why has this taken so long? You have prayed sincerely. You have kept your word even when keeping it cost you something. You have continued showing up for people who did not always show up for you, and still the thing you asked me for has not arrived. Somewhere in that waiting, you have quietly begun wondering whether the delay means something is wrong with you. It does not. Let me show you what was happening while. From where you stood, it seemed as though nothing was happening at all. When the temple was being built, the stones were prepared somewhere else. Each piece was measured, shaped, and finished at the quarry far away from the place where the temple would stand, so that when the stones finally arrived, there was no hammer striking them, no chisel cutting them, and no great noise coming from the hill. Someone standing there and seeing only the finished pieces might have thought the building had appeared without any work behind it. But the work had been happening all along. It simply was not happening where everyone was looking. That is what I have been doing in your life. You measured your season by how much noise it made, and because you heard so little, you began to believe you had been forgotten. But silence is not absence. There are seasons when I work in ways you can clearly see, and there are seasons when I am moving beneath the surface, in ways that make no sound you can recognize. You have been living through that quieter kind of season. What you looked at and called a wasted year, I looked at as a place where work was being done. Now I want you to hear something more difficult, and I want you to stay with me when you hear it, because some of the resistance you encountered was not simply random. Not every door that closed was coincidence. There is an enemy of your soul, and he is not imaginative, but he knows how to wait. He rarely needs something dramatic to wear you down. Often all he needs is one sentence repeated so many times that eventually you stop questioning where it came from. You are too late. You are too much. You are not the kind of person good things happen to. He did not target you because you were weak. He saw what your obedience could change, and he understood what it would cost him if you followed through. Look back honestly at the seasons when you were closest to real change, because those were often the seasons when everything seemed to become strangely difficult at once. A relationship suddenly turned cold for reasons you could not understand. Provision became uncertain just as another door seemed to be opening, and discouragement became unusually heavy at the very moment you were preparing to move. That was not simply bad luck. So today I am reaching into those old sentences you have carried and pulling them out by the roots, one at a time. He told you that you were already behind. I tell you that you are where my hand has allowed you to stand, and my timing does not arrive late. He told you that you had exhausted every opportunity you would ever have, but my mercy has never been a limited resource. and I have never rejected the person who turned back to me. He told you that you were too damaged for anything good to remain in your hands. But I have always worked through people whose lives were marked by brokenness, and I have never required a flawless vessel. He told you that you had asked for too much. I tell you that you have often asked for far less than what your heart was capable of believing, and your fear of asking boldly has grieved you more deeply than your courage ever could. He told you that your best days were already behind you. I tell you that the strongest part of your story has not yet been written, and I am the one holding the pen. He told you that you would have to walk alone, but I tell you that there are people already being placed along your road who do not even know your name yet. He told you that if I truly cared, your life would not hurt this much. I tell you that my care for you is deeper than giving you the quickest answer to every painful question. You had been listening to the wrong voice for a long time, and there is something strange about the way a lie becomes powerful. The more effective it becomes, the quieter it sounds. Eventually it stops feeling like an attack and begins to sound exactly like your own reasonable judgment about yourself. That is when it can do the deepest damage. So today I am interrupting every sentence inside you that ends with, I cannot, I am not, or I never will. I am cutting those words off at their source, and I do not want you defending them to me or explaining why they seem reasonable. You have repeated them for so many years that they have started to feel like realism, but 20 years of believing a lie does not make it truth in the 21st year. Hear me clearly now, because I want you to know what is true instead. You are wanted. You are not being tolerated, and you are not being carried because someone feels obligated to keep you around. You are wanted in the way a craftsman values the particular stone he has shaped with intention, and there is work in this world that carries marks only you can leave. Some of that work has remained unfinished because you were persuaded to doubt that you were capable of being the one who stepped into it. Let me hear your amen if your faith is still standing after everything you have walked through. Now I want you to understand something about the way I answer you, because my answers rarely arrive in exactly the shape you imagined. The form you expect is often smaller than what your deeper need actually requires. You have asked me for relief, but I am bringing you toward release, and those are two different things. Relief can ease the pressure for a little while release changes what you are carrying and what you remain attached to. You wanted the weight made lighter, but I intend to take some of that weight from your back altogether. And for that to happen, you will have to loosen your hands around things you have held for so long that your fingers have almost forgotten what it feels like to open. That is part of why this has taken time. It was not because I was moving slowly. You were still holding tightly to things you were being asked to release. Some of what you've been carrying was never given to you as your responsibility. You picked it up because you felt guilty, because you had become accustomed to carrying it, or because someone placed it in your hands during a moment when you were too exhausted to say no. You have paid for that moment again and again, and after carrying the weight for so long, you began to assume that the ache was simply what life felt like. It is not. Put it down. I never asked you to carry that burden, and I am not impressed by how long you managed to endure it. There is also a kind of strength in you that you have mistaken for a burden because it has cost you something to possess it. You feel things deeply, you notice what other people overlook, and when you encounter someone who is hurting, something inside you turns toward them before you can simply walk away. You have called that weakness because it has made your life more painful at times, but I place that sensitivity within you for a reason, and I am going to show you what it was for. Stay with me here, because what comes next will ask something of you. I need you to settle one thing in your heart before we go any further. Faith is not the same thing as a feeling. Faith is what you continue to do when the feeling you wanted is nowhere to be found. It is like taking one step through a dark hallway before your hand has found the wall, trusting enough to move even though you cannot yet see what your next step will touch. Many people spend their lives waiting until they feel completely certain before they move, but that certainty never arrives, because certainty was never the requirement. You already understand this from smaller moments in your own life. There was a morning when you got up and honored a commitment you had almost stopped believing in, and somehow you kept going. There was another day when you chose to speak kindness to someone who had given you little reason to, and it cost you something, but you did it anyway. That was faith, even though it did not feel sacred in the moment. It simply felt like choosing to keep moving. What I am asking from you now is that same kind of movement in a place where your trust will actually be tested. A trust that remains only inside your thoughts costs you nothing, And because it costs nothing, it changes very little. Trust becomes real when it requires you to open your hand. Every person I have ever brought into a wider life eventually reached a point where something had to be released before the new thing could be received, not because I needed to possess what they were holding, but because a grip had become the last wall between them and me. You have reached that place now, my child. I'm asking you to place a portion of what you have, something that carries real weight for you, upon the altar of this work, like gold placed upon the scales of a calling. Let it become a seed entrusted to deep water, an offering laid upon the stone instead of something you keep hidden because fear tells you to hold it back. In releasing it, you are showing that your trust rests in my hand to provide, and that your heart is no longer determined to cling to lack. What you release in faith does not simply disappear from your life. It moves forward into the harvest I am preparing. Now let me speak to what will rise inside you next, because I already know that voice. It will tell you to wait until the circumstances improve, and it will sound reasonable while it speaks. It will dress itself in the language of wisdom and caution, but underneath that careful expression will be fear. That fear has cost you more opportunities over the years than many obvious enemies ever could. Fear rarely tells you to stop forever. More often it tells you to wait. It offers you a slightly better moment that always seems to be somewhere ahead of you, close enough to imagine but never close enough to reach. A person can spend an entire life sitting in that waiting room, agreeing with every good instinct inside them while acting on none of them. I am not asking you to become reckless, and I have never asked you to move carelessly. I am asking you to become honest about which voice is actually speaking when you decide that you will do it later. Now I want you to release something deeper, because this one is harder to place down than anything you can hold in your hands. Somewhere underneath everything you have been taught, you have begun to believe that good things must be paid for with suffering, as though an easy season means you have not sacrificed enough to deserve what comes next. You built much of your understanding of worth around effort, around how much you could endure, accomplish, fix, or carry. That way of living made you strong in many ways, but it also left you exhausted. So hear me plainly, you cannot earn what I have already decided to give. There is no hidden loophole in that. This is simply how grace works in your life. If you could earn it, it would be wages, and wages can be lost, which would leave you spending the rest of your life terrified that one mistake might make you unworthy of receiving again. I did not create your life to be governed by the fear that you might finally fall short. Some of what is coming into your life will have no obvious connection to how hard you worked for it, and that may feel strangely uncomfortable to you. You will look for the condition attached to it, search for the hidden cost, and wonder when someone will finally hand you the bill. Part of you may even feel tempted to ruin something good simply because goodness you did not earn does not fit the story you have carried about yourself. Do not do that. Open your hands and allow the discomfort to pass through you. The people who receive most freely from me are not necessarily the people who appear the most impressive. They are the ones who finally stop standing before my goodness and arguing about whether they had earned the right to receive it. That is the difference, not talent, not history, and not the number of years you have served or endured. It is simply the willingness to accept what is being placed into your hands, without demanding that you prove yourself worthy first. You have been standing in front of a table that has already been prepared, insisting that you belong in the kitchen washing dishes instead. Sit down. The place has been prepared for you. Your place has been waiting, and you have spent far too long believing you needed to earn your seat before you could take it. I know what happens inside you after something good finally reaches you, because I have watched the pattern for years. You receive something beautiful, and almost immediately your mind starts calculating how to make the account even again. You search for a way to repay it, take on something extra, or give something back before anyone can remind you that you owe them. You have struggled to simply receive a gift and let it remain a gift, and that habit came from somewhere real. Somewhere along the road you learned that kindness usually came with a price, so you began paying ahead of time because you thought that would protect you from being surprised later. It did protect you in certain ways, but it also left you tired. It kept you at a distance from me because it is difficult to remain close to someone when you are always trying to settle an account with them. There has never been a ledger between us. I have never been adding up what you owe against everything I have given you, waiting for you to somehow make the balance right. What I give freely, and when I give it, I do not stand over you waiting for repayment. So let this next season teach you how to stop reaching for your purse every time something good comes your way. Let something arrive and simply belong to you. Let kindness reach you without immediately planning how you will return it. That is not laziness, and it is not pride. It is what trust begins to look like when it has finally grown beyond the need to keep score. And when that weight begins to lift, you will notice something you have almost forgotten how to feel. Room. Room inside your mind to think clearly. Room inside your chest to breathe. Room in the quiet to hear me when I speak. You will no longer spend every silent moment calculating what remains unpaid or wondering what you still owe. And what I do within you will touch the people you carry in prayer, the names you whisper when the house is dark and no one else can hear you. What happens in your life will not remain contained within your life. It will reach people you love, because a person who has finally found some inner rest changes the atmosphere of every room they enter. And I am bringing you toward that kind of settling. But now I want to speak to you about time, because this is where your faith has been wounded most deeply. You have never truly believed that I lack power. You know I am able to do what you have asked. What has become difficult for you is trusting when I will do it. That doubt is quieter than unbelief, and in some ways it is more painful, because you can still believe in my power while slowly losing your expectation that I will move in your life. So let me remind you of Joseph, a young man who spent years in a place where he never imagined he would remain. His own brothers sold him, and he was carried into a foreign land whose language and customs were not his own. He served faithfully, was falsely accused, and because he chose integrity, he was sent to prison and left there. While he was in that prison, Joseph showed kindness to someone who promised to remember him when he was free. That man walked out of the prison and forgot Joseph completely. 2 more years passed, not 2 days and not 2 weeks, but 2 ordinary years of mornings inside a cell, with no letter, no sign, no indication that anything was about to change. Then one night, a ruler had a dream that no one around him could interpret. In that single moment, the man who had forgotten Joseph suddenly remembered his name. Joseph was brought out of the prison, cleaned up, dressed, and taken before the ruler of the nation. And before that day was over, his entire position had changed. By evening, the man who had spent years behind bars was standing second in command of the land. But I want you to understand what I am saying, and also what I am not saying. I am not telling you that Joseph's prison was good. It was not. I am not asking you to look back at every painful year and pretend you should have enjoyed it, or that the injustice done to you was somehow beautiful simply because something eventually came from it. Some things hurt because they were wrong, and you do not have to lie about that in order to trust me. What I am telling you is that the delay had a shape. Joseph could not serve that nation in the way he eventually did, until that nation reached a moment when it needed what he carried. He was not being forgotten in the way he thought he was. He was being positioned in a place he could not yet understand. And then, after years that seemed completely flat, one morning changed the direction of everything. That is often how my hand moves. Long stretches that seem uneventful. Ordinary days that appear almost identical. And then a single day arrives and suddenly the shape of your life looks different. You have been living through your own version of that flat stretch, and you have started to believe that the flatness itself is the whole story. It is not. It is simply the part of the story you are living before the morning comes. But listen carefully, because I will not flatter you just to make you feel better. I will not tell you that every painful thing that happened to you was secretly good, carefully arranged, or something you should be grateful for having endured. Some of what happened was simply wrong. People made choices, people hurt you, and you were left carrying consequences you did not deserve. You do not have to pretend otherwise in order to trust me. What I will tell you is stronger than pretending the wound never existed. Nothing that happened to you is beyond my reach to use. I do not need your history to be clean before I can build something from it. I can take what was done to you and turn it into capacity without asking you to call the wound good. And that capacity is real, because you have stood in rooms where you lost things you never thought you could lose. You can now sit beside someone whose world has fallen apart without needing to run from their pain. You know what to say to someone who has lost everything because you have stood in that place yourself. The knowledge cost you more than it ever should have, but it is still part of you, and I intend to use what you learned there. Now I want to correct another way you have been measuring your life. You have been comparing your progress with people whose roads you cannot actually see. You watch someone else move forward, and because you cannot see what their journey required, You assume their path was smoother and conclude that you must be the slow one. You do not have the whole picture, and you never will. Comparison has been taking years from you because it keeps convincing you that being somewhere different means being behind. And I do not place every person on one road and ask them all to arrive at the same place at the same time. I have given each person a road with its own turns, its own terrain, and its own places that no one else will understand in quite the same way. Your road has turns that belong to you alone. Being somewhere different from another person does not mean you have failed. It means you are walking a different road. Let the comparison go. It has never helped you become more faithful to your own life, and it has cost you moments you could have actually enjoyed. There is something else about my timing that I want you to remember, something you may never fully see while you are here. I have protected you from things you never even learned about. There were doors you begged me to open that would have led you into places you were not ready to survive. There were people you asked me to keep beside you who would have slowly taken pieces of you that you did not realize were precious. You mourned some of those closed doors, and I let you mourn them, because I would rather sit with your grief than watch you walk through something that would have wounded you even more deeply. You may never be given the complete list of what I protected you from, and some of the things I spared you from will remain hidden from you in this life. But I want you to consider something honestly. Some of the prayers you thought I had refused may have been among the most loving answers I ever gave you. Let that change the way you hold the prayers that are still unanswered, because there are prayers inside you that I have not forgotten or moved past. I know some of them hurt when you remember them, and I know some have been there for years. You stopped saying certain prayers out loud long ago, but every now and then something happens, and you feel them rise again, as though your heart never truly released them. You did not forget those prayers, you simply moved them somewhere quieter. I have not forgotten a single one, not one. I remember the prayers you can barely remember forming, and I have held them with a seriousness you may never have been able to give them yourself. So keep bringing them to me, even the old ones, especially the ones you became too tired to say aloud. And when you begin to see something move, do not rush to explain it away as coincidence. You have learned to call things chance, because that way you can protect yourself from the pain of believing something good has finally happened, only to watch it disappear again. I understand why you developed that habit. In its own way, it helped you survive disappointment, but it has also caused you to overlook moments when I was answering you, because you were so afraid of being disappointed that you would not allow yourself to recognize the answer. Start noticing. That is all I am asking of you right now. Pay attention to the small things you once would have dismissed, because I want you to see what has already changed before you decide that nothing has changed at all. You have been waiting for the outside of your life to become different, so that you could finally believe something was happening, while the first movement began inside you months ago. Think about the last difficult week you lived through. Something happened that 2 years ago might have completely undone you, and this time it did not. You felt the pain, you became angry, you probably slept badly that night, and for a little while you struggled to settle yourself, but then you got up and faced the next day. You did not spend an entire month unraveling the way you once might have, and that matters more than you have allowed yourself to recognize. You are steadier than you were. Your reactions have slowed down, and you are not as desperate for everyone around you to understand or agree with you. There are opinions that once could have disturbed you for days that now pass through your life without carrying the same power. You no longer chase approval in the same way, and you have stopped exhausting yourself trying to explain your heart to people who had already decided they would not listen. Something inside you is settled. Do not dismiss that as a small thing. Learning to become settled after years of living in reaction is a profound change, even if there is no photograph, announcement, or outward achievement to prove it happened. You have also become more difficult to deceive, because there was a time when you would sense that something was wrong with a person, and then talk yourself out of what you noticed simply because you desperately wanted the relationship to work. You do not do that in the same way anymore. You notice what you notice, and you are learning to honor that awareness instead of immediately arguing with yourself about it. That discernment is something I have placed within you, and I have been sharpening it through what you have lived. You are going to need that discernment soon, because when a season changes, not everyone who was part of the previous season will continue walking at the same pace with you. Some relationships were built around the version of you who was struggling, and they may not know how to remain close to the version of you who has become steadier. Some people were comfortable when you needed them just a little more than they needed you, and when that dependence begins to change, you may discover things about those relationships that you could not see before. It will hurt, and it will also be a mercy, and both of those things can be true at the same time. Do not force the process. You do not need to make announcements, explain every change, or create a confrontation just to prove that you have grown. Keep walking and let the road reveal what belongs beside you. What is meant to continue with you will find its pace beside yours, and what cannot will gradually fall behind without you having to drag it away. One day you will look up and realize that the distance has already formed between you and certain people. Now let me tell you how to recognize what is coming, because you have asked me for discernment, and I am answering that question. What I bring will not necessarily arrive with noise, spectacle, or the kind of drama you have been trained to recognize as important. Remember that the thing you have prayed for may not announce itself with fireworks. This is where many people overlook the very thing they have been asking for, because they are searching the horizon for something spectacular, while the answer is quietly standing in front of them, waiting to be recognized. You will know it by what happens inside you. It will bring a settling in your chest rather than simply a rush of excitement, because excitement can be intense and still lead a person somewhere destructive. I want you to look for something quieter than excitement. Look for the feeling of ground beneath your feet, when moments before you felt as though there was nothing solid to stand on. Look for that steadiness. That is the mark I want you to pay attention to. And as you learn to recognize it, you will become less easily confused by the things that merely appear impressive. There is another mark you should watch for as well. What comes from me will not require you to abandon the character I formed in you simply to obtain it. If something requires you to betray who you are, compromise what you know is right, or become someone you cannot recognize just to possess it, do not call it mine, simply because the timing looks perfect. My provision fits the person I made you to be. It does not require you to destroy your character to receive it. And there is a third thing I want you to notice. What comes from my hand will make room for generosity rather than teaching you to become more guarded. What I place in your hands is meant to move through you. So when something arrives and your immediate instinct is to clutch it tightly, hide it from everyone, and make sure no one else can touch it, stop and examine what is happening inside you. Do not assume that every opportunity that looks good is automatically mine. Pay attention to the fruit it produces in you, because what I give you is not meant to turn your heart into a closed fist. Now I want to speak to the part of you that is still afraid to hope. I know why you hesitate. You have hoped before, and something you deeply wanted ended painfully. So somewhere along the way you decided that expecting very little would keep you safer. It did protect you from some disappointment, but it also flattened your experience of life, until even good things began to arrive without really reaching you. Good news comes, and you receive it cautiously, almost at a distance, already waiting for the part where something goes wrong. You tell yourself that this is peace because you are no longer getting your hopes up. But that is not peace. That is numbness wearing the appearance of peace. And I did not create you to live with your heart permanently closed behind that kind of protection. I am asking you to hope again. I know what I am asking, because I know exactly what hope will expose in you. It will uncover the part of your heart that was hurt, the part that learned to stay guarded, because opening itself once came at a price. I am not promising you that nothing will ever disappoint you again, because I will not make a promise simply to make you feel safe in this moment. But I will tell you this. I am worth the risk of your hope. A life lived with every shutter closed is a life where even the light has difficulty reaching you. So open one shutter, just one. Let a little light enter and allow yourself to see what happens without demanding that you know the entire outcome first. You have made it through every day you once believed would destroy you. Every single one. That record is complete, and it is not merely luck. It is not only the result of your own strength, even though the strength in you is real. I have been beneath you through all of it, holding you when you thought there was nothing left beneath your feet. And I have never allowed the floor to disappear completely. Say your amen now if you are ready to walk where I am leading. There comes a moment in every honest conversation with me when words have done all they can do, and something has to move from thought into action. We have reached that moment now. I have shown you what I see, I have shown you what has been happening beneath the surface, and I have shown you how to recognize what may be coming. But none of this moves forward simply because you heard it. It begins when you respond to one small thing, and I want to be very clear about what I mean. Let me take you back to a night on the water. The disciples were far from shore in a boat surrounded by darkness, fighting against a wind that would not make their journey easy. Then they saw a figure approaching them across the surface of the sea, and they were terrified because everything they knew told them that what they were seeing could not happen. One of them called out and asked to come. Peter did not demand an explanation first. He did not ask me to explain the mechanics of what was about to happen. He asked for one word. When that word came, he climbed over the side of the boat and placed himself above deep water in the middle of the night. Think about what he actually possessed in that moment. He had no visible evidence that the water would hold him, no human precedent he could rely on, and no complete understanding of what would happen next. He had one word from me and the willingness to act on it, and the water held him. For a moment that man walked across the sea. Then he looked at the wind, his attention shifted, and he began to sink. But do not miss the part people often leave out. He was not abandoned when he began to fall. My hand reached him immediately, and he was brought back into the boat, and even after he stumbled, he remained the only one among them who had stepped out of the boat and walked upon the water. Hold both parts of that story together. You will sometimes be asked to move before you understand, and that is not a mistake in the way this works. It is part of the way faith works. Understanding comes on the other side of obedience more often than it comes beforehand. If I gave you the entire explanation before every step, you would build your life around a plan instead of learning to walk with me, and you will wobble sometimes. You will step out, then notice the wind, and fear will come back with force. You may feel yourself beginning to sink, and even then, that is not where the story ends. My hand reaches you faster than you can fall, and it always has. So stop waiting for the moment when you finally feel completely steady before you move, because steadiness often comes after the step, not before it. You are asking me when you will feel ready, and I am asking you to trust me enough to begin while you still feel uncertain. Now, what is the step? You already know it. It crossed your mind more than once while you were listening, and each time you felt it, you quietly moved past it and kept listening. It may be the conversation you have been avoiding, the apology you have known for years. You needed to give the thing you keep saying you will begin someday, or the habit you know has been slowly consuming more of your life than you want to admit. It may be the door you have been standing beside for a long time, telling yourself you will knock when the timing finally feels right. That is the thing. You know it. It is not hidden from you, and it is not as vague as you have been pretending it is. You have known what it is while we have been talking. I am not asking you to understand the entire road or to solve the rest of your life in one moment. I am asking you to take one step this week while the weight of what you are hearing is still fresh in you. Because the pull you feel right now will eventually become quieter. It always does. That is not evidence that you failed, and it is not a sign that this moment meant nothing. It is simply part of being human. The difference between a person who keeps changing and a person who keeps postponing often comes down to what they do while the conviction is still close enough to feel. So do not sleep on it. Do not tell yourself that you will act when you wake up in a better mood. Do not make the promise that you will handle it once this difficult season finally becomes calm, because there will always be another responsibility, another uncertainty, another reason to wait. There is no version of your life where every obstacle disappears and you suddenly receive perfect conditions for obedience. If you keep waiting for that version of life, you will keep waiting. I know another fear that is sitting underneath this one, and I want to speak about it gently. Part of you is afraid of what will happen if you finally try and it does not work. As long as you leave the thing untouched, there is still a possibility that it could become everything you hoped. But the moment you reach for it, you may have to face an actual answer. I understand why that frightens you. I simply do not want that fear deciding the shape of your life. A possibility you protect for 20 years can cost you more than an honest answer, because that possibility keeps taking small pieces of your heart while giving you nothing solid to stand on. Reach for it. If the door does not open, I will make that clear to you, and I will not leave you standing outside in the cold with nowhere to go. But you cannot receive an answer to a question you are unwilling to ask. And there is one more thing standing between you and that step. It is the quiet belief that these kinds of changes happen to other people, but somehow they do not happen to someone like you. You have watched other people's lives change, and you have genuinely been happy for them. Yet somewhere underneath that happiness was a tired little thought saying, "That is for them. That is not the kind of story my life gets." You became the person who keeps everything running, while someone else gets to do the remarkable thing. You became accustomed to supporting other people's movement, while quietly assuming that your own life would remain ordinary in the places that matter most. I want that thought pulled out by the root today. I have never restricted what I can do to one particular kind of person. Look at the people I have used: a shepherd boy with no standing, a woman whose history became the subject of the whole town's conversation, fishermen with rough hands and little formal education, and a tax collector people openly despised. None of them looked like the obvious choice when you first saw them, and none of them was brought into their story by accident. I do not choose from the top of some human pile, and I never have. I look for the person who will actually move when I say move. It has far less to do with talent than you have imagined, and far more to do with willingness. And you are willing. You have been willing for a long time. You have simply been waiting for someone to tell you that you were allowed to take the step. I am telling you now, you are allowed. Go. And when you go, do not demand that I show you the entire plan before you begin. I will give you the next step when you need it, and then the next one after that. When you take the step in front of you, another part of the road will become visible. That is how I have often led you. The light I give you reaches the ground immediately in front of your feet, and that is enough light for the step you are being asked to take. You do not need the whole road illuminated tonight in order to walk the part that is already visible. We are coming toward the close of what I came here to tell you, and I want you to leave this moment carrying something you can actually remember. You arrived here with a quiet pull you had been trying to explain away. I want you to leave knowing what it is. That stirring is not simply dissatisfaction with a good life, and it is not merely restlessness that you need to outrun. It is an invitation that I have been extending patiently while you have searched for reasons to dismiss it. I am moving you deliberately. You are not being punished, and you are not being put through some meaningless test just to see whether you will endure it. You are not being abandoned to figure everything out alone. You are being moved by a hand that does not casually drop what it has taken hold of. Now let me tell you what I am restoring in the season ahead. I am restoring your appetite. Somewhere in the last several years, you stopped wanting certain things because wanting them had become painful. You told yourself that you had simply become content. And some of that really was growth, but some of it was surrender, wearing the clothes of maturity. I know the difference even when you have trouble seeing it. I am giving you back the ability to desire something without immediately preparing yourself for the pain of losing it. I am restoring your voice as well. There are things you stopped saying because of the way people responded when you were honest, so you learned to soften your words, qualify what you meant, and leave the most important sentence unsaid if saying it might make the room uncomfortable. That habit has cost people some of the truth they needed from you. I am putting strength back into your speech, and it will be strength that still knows how to be kind. It will be gentle where gentleness is needed, but it will also have enough weight to say what needs to be said. I am restoring your rest, and I do not mean sleep alone. I mean the deeper place beneath sleep, where your mind no longer feels responsible for standing guard every hour of the night. You have been living in a constant state of readiness, listening for the next problem even when the room was quiet, as though everything would collapse if you stopped watching for a moment. I am relieving you of that watch. You are not the one who has been holding your entire life together, even though you have spent years acting as though everything depends on you. The exhaustion you feel is partly the weight of a responsibility you were never meant to carry. And I am restoring your sense of home. You have felt slightly out of place for a long time, sometimes even among people who genuinely love you. That feeling does not mean there is something defective in you. Part of you has remained oriented toward me, and because I take care of Imam, and this world has ever been able to make you feel completely settled within it. That feeling is not something you need to be ashamed of. It can serve as a compass. Now listen carefully to how the months ahead may unfold, because I will not give you a false picture simply to make you feel excited. It will not all happen at once, and the first indication may be small enough that you could easily overlook it. There will be an initial sign that seems almost too ordinary to matter. Something will shift in a way you did not arrange. A door that has remained closed for years will begin to move, or a conversation you never planned will suddenly find its way into your path. When it happens, do not immediately shrug and explain it away. Notice it. Give thanks aloud, even if some part of you feels foolish for doing so. Then there may be another stretch where everything seems quiet again. This is where I need you to remain steady. That pause will not mean I have withdrawn from you. It will mean that the next piece is not ready yet. You have spent so much of your life interpreting every pause as rejection that you have sometimes mistaken patience for abandonment. Read the pause differently this time. Then, little by little, things will begin to gather momentum. You may look back a year from now and struggle to identify the exact day your life changed, because it may not have turned through one dramatic moment at all. It may have changed through 100 small movements while you were simply living your ordinary days. That is often how I work, not always through one blinding moment, but through accumulation, patiently and quietly, until the shape of a life has changed so much that you can no longer find one single point where it happened. Some of what I do will also reach the people you love, the ones whose names you carry into prayer when the house is dark and sleep will not come. I have heard every one of those prayers. I want you to know that the prayers you have spoken for other people have not disappeared into silence. I am working in lives you cannot reach and cannot control, in ways you may not understand, for a long time. Keep praying for them. It matters more than you know, and some of what I do will reach people you have not met yet. There are people you will meet along your road who need something only your own experience can give them. What you have survived will matter to someone who is standing in a place you once stood, and they will not be helped in quite the same way by someone who has only read about suffering from a distance. They need someone who knows what that ground feels like beneath their feet, because they have walked across it themselves. And when you meet them, you may finally understand a part of your own history that has confused you for years. Now let me speak to the doubt that will probably meet you tomorrow, because it will come. You will wake up, the feeling you have right now will be quieter, and the ordinary responsibilities of your day will settle back onto your shoulders. Then a voice may tell you that what happened tonight was simply emotion, that you became caught up in the moment and imagined something meaningful was happening. Be ready for that voice, because it often arrives after a moment when you have genuinely encountered me. You do not need to recreate tonight's feeling in order to prove that it was real. Feelings rarely survive the ordinary rhythm of a Tuesday morning. That is not a failure, it is simply the nature of feelings. What matters is what you do when the atmosphere changes. Take the step you already know about, even when the emotion is faded. Obedience can carry what a feeling cannot, and a decision made while everything is clear can remain true even when the road ahead becomes foggy again. And there is something else I want you to stop doing with me. Stop beginning your prayers with an apology, as though you have to settle some debt before you are allowed to speak. You do not have to clean yourself up before you come near me. There is no entrance fee at this door, no price you must pay before I will listen, and no perfect condition you must reach before you can bring me what is actually happening inside you. Come as you are, in whatever condition you are in the middle of whatever you have just done and whatever you are still trying to understand. I would rather hear the honest prayer you can barely put together than receive polished words from someone who is keeping me at a distance. You are not a project I am reluctantly carrying until you become acceptable. You are mine. That was settled long before this conversation began, and it is not something I am reconsidering now. So let this be the day something turns, not because the sky suddenly opened above you, and not because you experienced some extraordinary feeling that made every question disappear. Let it turn because you heard the quiet voice you had been dismissing, and this time you chose to listen. That is the difference between remaining in the same place and beginning to move. The road ahead of you is good, and I will not tell you that it will always be easy, because you would know immediately that I was only trying to comfort you. But it is good, and it leads somewhere, and I am already there, waiting for you at the far end of what you cannot yet see. Walk slowly if that is all you can manage. Walk unevenly if your strength comes and goes. Walk with questions still unanswered and uncertainty still sitting beside you. But keep walking. I am with you in the hours when nobody else sees what you are carrying. I am with you in the ordinary middle of the week when nothing feels particularly sacred. I am with you when your faith feels thin, when you are simply going through the motions, and when you wonder whether any of what you are doing even registers with me. It registers. Every bit of it registers. The prayers you barely finished, the days you kept going without feeling strong, the small acts of obedience no one applauded. I have seen all of it, and before I let you go, there is one last thing I want you to hear. You have spent a long time being the strong one, the person everyone turns toward when something breaks. You are the one who absorbs the difficult news first, gathers yourself, and then figures out how to make the situation easier for everyone else. You have carried that role for a long time, and you have carried it better than most people realize. But there is a question I want you to let yourself hear tonight. Who carries you? I do. I always have. And I am not carrying you because I have been assigned a duty that I am obligated to fulfill. I am carrying you because you are mine. So tonight, put something down. You do not have to surrender everything at once. I am asking you for one thing. You know the situation you keep turning over in your mind at 2 in the morning, replaying every possibility as though one more hour of thinking will finally produce the answer. That one thing you keep picking back up when you should be resting, give it to me before you go to sleep. Leave it with me until morning. You will probably reach for it again. I know that. A habit of carrying everything yourself does not disappear in a single night. When you notice your mind taking it back, do not condemn yourself. Simply place it in my hands again. And if you have to do that 10 times before morning, then do it 10 times. Give it back to me as many times as you need to. There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep alone cannot touch, and you have lived with it for so long that you have started to believe it is simply part of who you are. It is not your identity. It is the weight of a responsibility you were never meant to carry by yourself. Set it down. Let your body rest like someone who is being cared for, because you are. Now go and do the thing you have been putting off. Take the step you already know about, even if you still have questions. Then watch what I do with a person who finally chooses to move. Let your amen be the last word you speak tonight, if you believe every word I have spoken over you. If you would like to support this message and help keep this work going, you can use the QR code or the support link in the description. God bless you.